How's everybody doing? Am I on? Can you all hear me? How's everybody doing? So I've learned a very long time ago that if you put music to anything, it instantly gets people pumped up. So are we ready? So before I do anything, and before I even introduce myself, I like to just do this cheesy, maybe a little cheesy activity, right? It's super simple, super quick. But I want everyone just to take 10 seconds, right? To look around the room and look at somebody. Just look at them. Look at somebody, acknowledge their presence. And here's why I do this. And it's very important to understand why I do this, because with Npower, we are a national organization, and our job is to help people who are voiceless, those who have a lack of opportunity. Although they've got the qualified skill sets, they don't have an opportunity to improve their lives. And so they get caught in this vicious cycle that so many of us see people who are stuck in these situations, and we want to help them. I'm here today to just talk about one of the ways that Npower is changing the script, reframing the discussion, and allowing opportunities and pathways for folks from the inner city, from the underserved community, from the underrepresented communities to enter the tech workforce. And the reason I asked you to look at each other and just take a moment to say, I see you, is because so many times in the course of our day, we are so busy. We are caught going to a meeting. And if you're like me, you're probably triple booked tomorrow to make up for this whole day at a conference, right? Is that most of y'all? And so when we don't see somebody and we don't see what it is they're trying to do, we sometimes get lost in taking them for granted, assuming that they are the best versions of themselves all the time, when in fact, sometimes it's okay to not be okay. Is that fair? Sometimes it's okay to say, I don't have an answer. Sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know the solution, but you know what? I'm gonna find it. That's what Npower is. So who am I? I am Jonathan Pride. I am super passionate about what I do. And I always like to share my story because my story, I believe, is part of the Npower story. I'm a military veteran. I served 8 years on active duty as a military intelligence officer. Any veterans in the house? Everybody give it up. Thank you for your service. Of the folks who raised their hand, are any of you Army veterans? Okay, thank you more for your service. I'm just kidding. So here's my story. I mentioned I served 8 years on active duty. I was a military intelligence officer. I managed a team of about 30 intelligence soldiers. So for those who are in the military, you know, these are folks who have unique skill sets. They are linguists, they are interrogators, they are folks who know how to run and build and develop softwares and databases, and they're one of the most unique soldiers in the Army. And I managed a team of 30 of them, and I deployed to Iraq with this team, and this team was very close, very tight-knit, okay? And they were tight-lipped because they were intelligence. So we didn't say a lot. That's not what I was trying to say, but that's the answer. So this group of soldiers were a family. And as a platoon leader, a young officer, I was the one in charge of this team. And I committed to every one of them to deploy to Iraq and get everyone home safe, to their mothers and fathers and spouses and brothers and sisters and kids and everyone else. So when I transitioned out of that role in about 2013, 2014, I had orders from the military. Hey, you did great here. It's time for you to, relocate to another base, and it's time for you to deploy to Afghanistan. Well, the problem is I didn't really want to go to Afghanistan at the time. My wife and I had a daughter, our second child. We were blessed, and it was a very difficult pregnancy for my wife, and we really took stock of our life and what the military provided for me for 8 years, and I made a decision that I was going to leave the only job I knew as an adult as a military intelligence officer in the U.S. Army. I found a job in Denver. We were living in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson, Colorado, a beautiful area. My family committed to Colorado. We loved it there. And the job I had in Denver, I had about 3 to 4 months of lead time, right? I did interviews. The hiring manager said, you're it. You're our guy. Get out of the military. You're going to start here in Denver. It was an hour commute. I had planned everything out, where I was going to office, what I was going to do. Boom, 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 boom. You all know the drill. I was preparing for it. And about a month before my separation date from the Army, I get an email, and the email's from my eventual employer, and they say, hey, John, we're excited to have you join our team. Only small exception is this position that you wanted in Denver is actually relocating to California. So instead of staying in Denver, we still want you, but I'm gonna need you to move you and your family, 6-month-old baby, to California. Again, the only problem is I didn't really want to move to California at the time. So I was faced with a very difficult decision. What do I do? Do I take this job in California, go where life is leading me, or do I say no and take control back? At the time, I had a master's degree. I had a Six Sigma black belt certification. I was a project manager. I had the PMP certification. I figured I'd be okay as a military officer. I figured I'd figure it out when I got to whatever the next job was for me. And so my wife and I rolled the dice, and we took a job in Virginia with about 2 weeks before I got out of the Army, and then my life went from there. That's my story. However, my story runs parallel to somebody I almost alluded to in the beginning of my story, and that's a military intelligence soldier. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm gonna call her Jessica. Jessica was in my unit. She, like the other 29 soldiers in my unit, looked to me for guidance. She looked to me for direction. She looked to me for purpose. I took her to Iraq. I took her home. We developed a camaraderie in this team, and she was a key part of that team. Around the same time of me deciding to get out of the Army, she decided to get out of the Army for a different reason. She was from Oregon. She was going back home to Oregon. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a college degree. She wasn't certified. She didn't have the credentials according to what credentials look like on the private sector. And so she got out around the same time I did. And, I spoke to her and kept in touch with her and asked her for the plan and asked her to follow up with me several times, and she didn't. One day she stopped responding. And so I did some research and tried to call around the people we knew in the unit. And I found out that Jessica committed suicide. She couldn't find a way. She couldn't see that her experience in military intelligence was more than enough to translate into anything IT. It was more than enough to be the top employee at a new employer. It was more than enough to live the values of loyalty and duty and respect and honor, selfless service and integrity. It was more than enough to be the next future CEO of the organizations that are represented in this room. It was more than enough. But because she didn't have a degree, she didn't have an advocate, she didn't have a proponent, she didn't have somebody who was pushing her and guiding her, she didn't have a support channel in Oregon to say, hold on, look, we got it, we got you, take your time. And because of that, I think she gave up. And part of me, still to this day, almost 10 years later, wonders what more I could have done. Could I have done one more phone call? Could I have done one more email? Could I have been the last person she spoke to before she made that decision? Could I have reached out to my network and my contacts and said, hey, listen, I've got a soldier who I will vouch for her to the death of me because I put my life in her hands when I was in Iraq. I will vouch for her and say that she is ready to take this role. She is ready to do something at your employer. That's what I could have done. And I didn't because I couldn't. And I wonder and I ask myself still, what more could I have done? And unfortunately, for every Jessica there is in my life, there's 23 of them every day who make that decision. There's 23 of them who get out of the military and decide that I need to transition to another life, but I don't know what my job and my experience can do in the other side. And that's where Npower enters. Npower is a national nonprofit, and our mission is to create pathways to prosperity for veteran spouses, and for young adults aged 18 to 26 from underserved communities. And we do that by enrolling them into our Tech Fundamentals program, or into our cybersecurity program, or into our cloud program, and we upskill them, we prepare them to be an employable employee at an organization. We provide them mentors, we provide them wraparound service support, we provide them industry experts and guest lecturers and financial literacy classes and everything to get them ready to make a decision to enter the tech workforce. Because according to our metrics, and you'll see that we are located across the United States. As the executive director for Npower Texas, I live here in Dallas, but we've got opportunities in San Antonio with our new office, in Houston with our new office, in Fort Worth with our new office that we're launching this year. And we are committed to training and representing 500 veterans and their spouses and young adults from 18 to 26 and launching them in a career in tech. And so before I do anything else, I want to share some stats, right? Because stats are everything. The average income of those coming into our program, it's about $12,000. So a lot of us in the room know that those are people who are living on public assistance. Life has gotten the better of them. Maybe they're like a Jessica and they just gave up and they're just one bad decision away from altering the rest of their life. Maybe there are folks who are multi-generational in one household and they're the sole income breadwinner and everyone's relying on them, so they can't take an opportunity like going to 4-year college. They can't afford it, and so they have to sacrifice their future for their now. So the average income is $12,000. After our program, and my next slide, my last slide I'm gonna share, is the full experience of our free IT workforce development training program. The average income post-program is $72,000 in 2022. So to get this math, you're taking someone who was making $12,000 and you're raising their income by 477% over the course of about 6 months, and you're making them and providing an opportunity for them to have generational wealth opportunities for not just them, not just their families, but for the communities they represent. For the people who look at them and say, look, I'm looking to you for the next step. I'm looking to you to see what you do to get out of this situation you're in. That's what our program is. And this is just a snapshot. I've got my team here somewhere. We have a booth here. I'm local. I'll stay here as long as we need to stay here after the conference. We need the power of the village. Because if we just offer our free tech training and we upskill everybody who comes into our doors and we say, hey, congratulations, you're certified, we have done nothing. It takes a village. It takes the employer partners who are willing to give somebody a chance to invest in their next future CEO, to invest in the opportunity to help somebody who has the credentials. Maybe they don't have the 4-year degree or the 2-year degree or the PhD or the master's degree or whatever degree, maybe has the integrity to be the gold standard for the culture that your companies are trying to build and represent. And so that's why we need the village. Because you know what we'll do? We're committed to providing up to 7 industry-recognized certifications at no cost to every one of our trainees, at no cost. And if they fail the first time, because a lot of folks that we deal with in this post-COVID world has test anxiety, we'll pay for another exam. We are committed to their success. And so the free tech training, either through Tech Fundamentals, for those who need entry-level talent, for cybersecurity, which is the fastest growing IT profession in today's economy, or cloud computing, which is for the more advanced trainees, right? Students. They're the ones who are in IT and they just need the opportunity to upskill. That's the free training. The industry-recognized credentials, that's the 7. And if you include cloud and cybersecurity, there's more. It could be up to 11 different certifications that are industry recognized and stackable. So they're able to be put on somebody along with an associate's degree or a college degree or whatever they already have. These stackable credentials can help upskill them and get them ready for the next career. Professional development is a big one. We don't just train, we don't just certify, but we prepare our students for working in the corporate environment on day one. We have a professional development series where we bring in experts and mentors and partners, and anyone in the room, if you have the heart to serve, talk to us about that and that alone. We need you, we need everyone to come into someone's life and just be a mentor. Tell them how it is on day one. Tell them how it is when dealing with a bad boss or dealing with a tough situation. That's what that program is. That program is designed to help do their resume, help with the mock interview, and help them re-script the way they approach the workforce. For some of the veteran spouses, and a lot of them are female, they've never had a real job because they're in a transient role. They move every 3 years. How can you have a career when you're moving every 3 years? So a lot of the veteran spouses we serve, they've never had a real interview with somebody across the table who's looking at them in a suit or a dress or whatever it is. And so we're preparing them for life, and that professional development series is part of our grand scheme to care for the person holistically. And most importantly, I'd say on this chart here, we have a social support arm, and this social support arm's role is to provide wraparound services. It's not enough to get a certification. It's not enough to get a job if you don't have a car. It's not enough to get a job. It's not enough to get certified and have free training and get a job if you don't know where you're going to get money to feed your kids. You don't know what it takes to enroll somebody in childcare, or you don't know what it takes to do whatever it is. Our social support managers are connected into the community with a web of nonprofit organizations that provide the full suite of services that our students need to be successful. And we lean very heavily on the social support managers when the trainees are going through our program. We want to remove every barrier they face to allow them to be successful in their next career. And that's our last bullet. We launched digital careers. I mentioned the finances. I mentioned the income these folks make. I mentioned the generational wealth opportunities. We are changing a community by removing one family out of poverty. And that one family, I believe, will become 2 when they tell somebody else about it. And then 4, and then 8, and then it's exponentially grown just by our free IT training program. I've got 5 minutes, and I started with this story. I want to end with this story. And I feel like this story is the definition of Npower. So maybe 6 months ago, we did a speed networking event. So this speed networking event was our first event in person post-COVID. And the idea was to bring in 70 industry mentors from big Fortune 500 companies to, mom and pop tech firms. And we brought in all of our students, and we aligned it where every one of our students would have a one-to-one interview about 5 or 6 times, right? And so it was like speed dating. Imagine going into a room, everyone's sitting down, you're doing an interview for 5 minutes, a buzzer goes off, you get up, you shake hands, you go to the next one. So these students, who most of them had no interviews ever, had 5 to 6 of them in the course of about an hour, 2 hours. Amazing event. The noise was loud, it was exciting. Our partners were there in full force. And so before the event started, I'm hosting the event. So I go into the bathroom just to kind of get my mind right for what we're going to talk about. And I see one of our students, and he's kind of in the corner of the room, and he's fidgeting. And I kind of walk up to him like, hey man, what are you doing? You all right? And I kind of pat his shoulder and turn him around a little bit, right? And he's sweating, right? More than me, and I'm sweating a lot right now. He's sweating, and his eyes are teary, and he's shaking, and he's fooling with the tie. And you know what he tells me? He says, sir, no one's ever shown me how to tie a tie. I looked at him and I said, hey man, it's okay. Took him to the mirror, calmed him down a little bit, helped him, dab his sweat a little bit, tied his tie for him while I was affirming I was validating his experience, saying, you know what, you got this, you're enough. We've prepared you to be more than enough. And we knew this mock interviewing event was meant to help train and get the students ready for job placement. It wasn't a job placement arm. It wasn't going to get them a job on the spot. And they all knew that, and I knew that, and the students knew that. After talking to this young man for about 5 minutes before the event started, he straightened his back up a little bit. He looked a little bit more confident because somebody believed in him. He walked down into that room and sat down with one of our Fortune 10 company partners and sat down in front of them and started, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm here to interview. And I kind of watched from afar and saw him in action. And would you believe me if I tell you, and this is no lie, he is one of 4 students that day who were by name requested by an employer for a job post program. By name requested. Because of the confidence somebody, not me, take me out of this story, anybody showed him in that bathroom before this major event to tell him that you've got it, you're more than enough. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And that's my last point before I sit down, because I have a minute 42. My last point is this. I realized that the economy is weird right now, right? For those in fintech, there's a lot of, there's not layoffs quite yet, but there's a good amount of hiring freezes. And I get that although the economy is still growing, it's at a slower speed. And so a lot of employer partners aren't really hiring right now. This is our bottom bullet. Npower is a Department of Labor registered apprenticeship program. What that means is our program is a pre-apprenticeship. We get them ready for on-the-job training. So if your organization or any organizations you know are looking to add apprentices who can't really fill a headcount that's vacant, but they can fill an apprenticeship slot or an intern slot, Npower is one of only 2 national nonprofits that are apprenticeships with our IT support, which is IT generalists, and our cybersecurity program. And so even though there may not be headcount from a FTE perspective, we can provide traditional, non-traditional, diverse talent as an apprentice, and in 6 months, you decide for yourself if they're the fit that you need moving forward, and then you convert them. That is the strength of our model. That is the strength of our program. We don't ask employers to lower the bar for our students. We just ask employers to lower the barriers. Give them a chance. Let's talk about the world of possible and the world for what it could be and for not what it is. John Pride, I'm out. Thank you.